My name's Shuman Basar. Welcome to this session, which has been called Discussing Museums, which is obviously an incredibly broad subject that could potentially go on for a very long time. We have an hour, I believe. My guests on the couch next to me here need very little introduction. In fact, when I asked Maria Finders about due protocol in this situation, she rather succinctly told me, quote, "If you're at a Motorhead concert, you don't read out Lemmy's biography." So for those of you who maybe even remember who Motorhead are, you'll probably agree that these are wise words, and I'll basically follow the sentiment, except to remind you about some basics. Thomas Krenz is Senior Advisor for International Affairs at the Solomon R. Guggenheim Foundation, and for some 20 years was the Director of the Guggenheim Foundation, under whose auspice the museum has become synonymous with daring and sometimes controversial expansion strategies, the latest of which is the Guggenheim Abu Dhabi, a project that Tom is spearheading. Mikhail Petrovsky has been Director of the State Hermitage since 1992. He's also author of more than 200 scholarly works, including catalogues of Arabic manuscripts, works on the spiritual and political history of Islam and Arab culture, and on the archaeology of Arabia. Credentials which, no doubt, provide a deep historical context for our conversation this afternoon on the future of museum cultures globally, and indeed here in the Gulf region. A guest that is missing this, unfortunately, who hasn't been able to make it, is Hassan Subi. Hassan Subi is the PMW Chief Executive Officer and is responsible for ensuring that the company's strategic plans and policies are delivered professionally and successfully. He's also known as a founder of the Hurricane Foundation, which is based in Alexandria and in Tripoli. So just to get things started off, I know, Mikhail, you wanted to say a few words in Arabic. Would this be a good time?
أولاً ولأننا نحن هنا في البلد العربي أريد أن أتكلم قليلاً بالعربية وأنا أرحب بكم جميعاً هنا في هذه الندوة العظيمة المهمة، ونحن سنناقش قضايا المتاحف. وهناك يوجد نقطتين المهمة بالنسبة لي. أولاً أن المتاحف ظاهرة تاريخية لهم بداية وممكن أن تكون لهم نهاية، لأن في ميلاد ممكن يكون هناك الموت، وهذا نحن لازم وهذا نناقش. نحن نريد استمرار المتاحف ولا لا. والشيء الثاني المهم الوحدة والتنوع، وهذه القضية مهمة جدا بالنسبة لفن الحديث المعاصر. اللغة الفنية موحدة، وهناك في تنوع في المدارس، أو لا يوجد هناك، توجد هناك المدارس الوثنية القومية. ونفس القضية موجودة تاريخيا. الفن الإسلامي وفن ذات اللغة الفنية الواحدة منتشرة في كل العالم المتحاضر في القرون الوسطى وفي العصر الوسيط، وهناك أيضا هناك تنوع لمختلف المدارس القومية والمحلية، وهذا المزاج بين الوحدة والتنوع شيء مهم جدا تاريخيا ومهم جدا بالنسبة لنا اليوم حتى في اقتصاد المتاحف، ونحن ممكن نتكلم عن هذا فيما بعد. I just wanted to say two important things which I think we are going to discuss here. First, museums have been born, there is in certain circumstances, so they can die. It's important to discuss, do we want them to die or not, because there is always a possibility. Another thing is about the common language of art, which is well known in contemporary art. It's international art, but there are some schools, or we want them to be there, some national schools inside. Historically, we see the Islamic art, which is the same story. It's the one language, one artistic language from China to Spain, and there are national schools or national trends which we can see. So history sometimes teaches us where we'll go from today to tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Mikhail. I believe you have some images. Have you?
Yes, there'll be some images. I wanted just to see the background of what
Perhaps we could
some of our plans for extension, and some of our examples of contemporary art in Hermitage, just without, if they go all on the screen.
Exactly.
I think you will not mind.
No, we're basically going to do this as a discussion. Neither Tom nor Mikhail have prepared a formal presentation, and we thought we would pick up on a certain number of topics. But maybe just to set a kind of thematic scene to allow me to pursue some of these subjects, I just prepared a small list, a kind of dramatic bullet point account of what we might call our present historical predicament. One of the recurrent phrases that TV journalists have been using the last few months since the economic crisis began is, quote, "We are living in unprecedented and precarious times," end quote. I'd like to sketch out some of the scenery to see just how unprecedented and precarious things actually are. Back in September, you might remember that when the Republican government first put forward the first economic bailout plan, George Bush was accused of being a Bolshevik by a Republican senator, which was kind of weird. At the same time that Obama was hailed as a Marxist, which perhaps is a little less weird. More recently, the media have not missed the opportunity for a certain amount of melodramatic, hysterical wording to describe the current situation. No, this won't. There was an amazing cover of The Economist recently, which shows a zombie hand emerging from a grave with the headline, "The Return of Economic Nationalism." The Financial Times has started a series called The Future of Capitalism, under which it proclaimed, quote, "An ideological god has failed." A major conference held in London last week on the return legitimacy of communism sold out in record time to a crowd of, quote, "very trendily dressed, arty 20-something-year-olds." Those aren't my words, they're a friend of mine. Western financial commentators have subtly praised the accidental survival technique of Islamic Sharia banking, as it supposedly has remained unscathed and miraculously for any bank at the moment in the black. And finally, what if we have entered a new world of deglobalization? Do we need a new theory that accounts for these mutations? I sketch this caricature out quite hurriedly for one important reason, I hope. Since the opening of Bilbao Guggenheim in 1997, which coincidentally is the same year that Britain welcomed New Labour into power after 18 years of Conservative government, the incredible popular and commercial success of contemporary art and big, prestigious museums around the world have been one of the visible cultural barometers of our era of plenty. Most museums are, of course, no longer as immune, perhaps, to the vicissitudes of global markets and economies. The days when the business of museums was a dirty notion are surely long gone. It's merely a pragmatic core of its reality. And with the Guggenheim and the Hermitage, we have, as it were on the surface, what looks like two very different models of museums and their relationship to state apparatus and, indeed, private sector support in relation to the current moment of globalization and deglobalization. So, before we get to this unprecedented and precarious moment and maybe talk about how both of these institutions, how Tom and Mikhail are planning or reacting to these conditions, I thought it'd be interesting for us to go back to a coordinate during this era of plenty, and now some 8 years ago, when you both of your institutions collaborated in a project which, so far, to my knowledge, has been the most explicit and high-profile one. I'm sure there are many others, which is the museum that you built together in the Venetian Hotel in Las Vegas. You injected 2 museum spaces into an extraordinary luxury casino, which had an indoor canal and a Venetian sunset. It would be great to hear how this project came about and what was it a response to at the time for both of you.